Young Intern laughs at woman's confidence, but her final words silence the room and inspire millions. Please subscribe to this channel for more captivating stories. Elena Rosario stepped out of the elevator and into the sixth-floor events lounge of Gallery Marketing, a Lagos agency famous for turning local brands into continental legends. Glass walls let in the bright, forgiving light of early morning, but the interior lighting played its own symphony of gold and white, reflecting off brushed metal fixtures and a jungle of vertical planters. The Tuesday brunch mixer was already in full swing. Account executives in pastel blazers drifted between high tables, balancing croissants, fruit skewers, and networking smiles. 20-something interns clustered near the smoothie bar, their lanyards brand new, their chatter bubbling like soda. Elena paused to take in the scene. At 42, she had learned to walk at a pace that kept her both present and untouchable, slow enough to notice, swift enough to avoid being noticed until she wished it. She wore a simple dove-gray midi dress, belted at the waist, and polished flats that had carried her through airports, boardrooms, and supermarket aisles with equal poise. A single silver chain rested on her clavicle. Her only other accessory was a fountain pen clipped to a leather-bound idea notebook that peeked from her tote. She walked toward the coffee urn, and two interns moved instinctively aside. Their respect came not from fear but from the unspoken physics that governs truly self-possessed people. The space around them seems to agree that they have the right-of-way. Nearby, a knot of interns whispered. One of them, Zoe Sani, whose navy suit fought for relevance against hair dyed a daring aquatic blue, leaned in and muttered, "Check the auntie energy at 9 o'clock." A ripple of laughter fluttered over the polished floor. It did not crash like a wave but shimmered like heat above asphalt, visible, fleeting, and hot enough to scald the unwary. Elena poured black coffee, lifted her cup, and turned in one graceful motion. Her gaze settled on Zoe, and a hush, so thin you could have sliced it with a post-it note, drifted down around the entire group. Elena smiled the way a seasoned actor might smile at the final dress rehearsal, confident, patient, already seeing the opening night that others could not yet envision. She stepped forward until only a marble side table separated her from Zoe. "Honey," she said, voice velvet yet unmistakable in the hum of chatter. "Confidence is louder than trends. That is why I do not need to shout." There was no sting in the words, only measured calm. The echo of them filled the intern's silence like incense fills a cathedral, slow and undeniable. Zoe's cheeks flushed the faintest rose beneath her bronzer. Elena turned away, coffee in hand, and walked to a panoramic window. Victoria Island unspooled below, traffic weaving, lagoon shimmering, billboards blinking their morning neon promises. Behind her, muted conversation resumed, but a new caution rippled through it. "You heard her," one intern whispered. Did not even raise her voice, another replied. "That is real presence," someone concluded. Zoe folded her arms, eyes darting to the floor, then to the older woman framing the skyline with her silhouette. Something indiscernible twisted inside Zoe, irritation, maybe, or the first tremor of respect that pride could not yet name. At 10 o'clock sharp, Elena entered a glass-walled war room labeled Edition Deck Alpha. The name was all chrome swagger, but the inside carried the practical scent of erasable markers and disciplined creativity. Arjun Kapoor, the agency's creative director, greeted her with a half-salute. "Elena, we will need your legacy angle for Rooted Radiance. We pitch on Friday." "Understood," Elena replied. She flipped open her notebook, uncapped her fountain pen, and in swift cursive wrote Heritage Beats Hype. Story beats slogan. A soft cough sounded behind her. She turned to find Miles Osifo, a junior designer whose spectacles magnified eyes full of notebook eagerness. "Is it fine if I sit in? I would like to see how you structure campaign DNA." Elena gestured to a seat beside her. "Sit. Watch. Ask." Miles slid in, heart thudding. Zoe, passing the doorway on her way to the copywriting bullpen, paused and watched that exchange. Her lips thinned. The company cafeteria smelled of jollof rice, basil pesto pasta, and ambition. Elena carried a salad and seated herself at a long table, greeting three project leads who shuffled to make space. She was midway through explaining a metric called emotional equity units, when Zoe dropped her tray across from her. Chicken wings. Pineapple juice. A daring seat choice. Zoe said nothing for a minute, nibbling a wing and scrolling her phone. Then, With forced nonchalance, she asked, "You really believe vintage sells, hey?" Elena dabbed her lips with a napkin. "Vintage is only shorthand. What truly sells is memory. People do not buy time. They buy proof that time was not wasted." Zoe tapped her screen. "Well, the data shows younger consumers swap brands every season." Elena met her gaze. "Data shows transactions. What we craft is loyalty." Across the table, the three project leads fell silent, absorbing the subtleties the way sommeliers assess tannins. Zoe opened her mouth for a retort but found none that sounded mature even to her own ears. She pushed back her chair. "We will see on Friday whose deck sings." Elena nodded once, serene and unreadable. Had an eavesdropper placed a hand on Zoe's chest as she walked away, they might have felt her heart beating faster than lunchtime should allow. Lagos dusk painted the clouds lilac and punched gold holes through them where the sun made its last stand. Elena guided her sedan through the residential gates of Orchid Close, security guards in gray uniforms saluting with brisk familiarity. Inside her duplex, air freshener mist clung to the corridor. The living room looked staged for a magazine, oatmeal-colored couch, symmetrical throw pillows, a teak coffee table holding a lone succulent. The stillness felt choreographed, like silence had been hired to perform. Darren Adebayo, her husband, sat hunched in the glow of a 32-inch monitor, wireless headset aflame with LED rings. He was a consumer insights analyst for a retail chain, and spreadsheets were his evening companions. Elena stood in the doorway, the motion sensor adjusting lights to a warmer hue around her figure. "I am back," she said. Darren raised one hand without moving his eyes from cell E4 to 7. "Welcome," he mumbled. Elena waited for him to ask about her day, to notice the faint coffee stain on his sleeve, to mention plans for the weekend. Nothing. Only the faint clack of keys and the distant sigh of the refrigeration unit. She drifted to the kitchen, plating coconut rice and grilled tilapia, the meal she had marinated before dawn. Carrying 2 plates to the dining nook, she tried again. "You must be starving." "I grabbed shawarma at the mall," Darren said, still typing. "You eat. I need to finish this regression model." Elena stared at the second plate steaming beside an empty chair. The overhead light was bright enough to throw 2 shadows, one of her, standing, one of the chair, waiting. She sat alone, forked rice into her mouth, and chewed until taste became texture. Somewhere short of half the plate, she stopped. She rose, carried both servings to the fridge, and arranged cling film with surgeon-like precision. Upstairs, in a small study painted sage green, she opened her journal and wrote, "The walls echo less than the silence between us. I crave one question from him, any question, even if the answer is obvious. Should I explain that tonight my coffee tasted like armor?" Her pen slowed. She drew a small box and wrote inside it, action steps. 1. Begin daily gratitude list. 2. Speak feelings plainly. 3. Remember that personal worth is intrinsic, not negotiated. She traced the box with her thumb, felt the wetting cling and dry. Outside, the refrigerator motor whirred off. Downstairs, keys still clacked. Elena closed the journal, pressed the cover to her sternum, and breathed. When she finally exhaled, her shoulders lowered as if she had put down a suitcase no one else could see. Sleep came in sputters. At 2:15, she found herself at the balcony door, staring past the mosquito screen at the road lights buzzing like lazy fireflies. She remembered when Darren used to stand next to her, arm around her waist, pointing out constellations neither of them could really name. "We are a story arc," she thought. We rose, plateaued, and forgot to write the twist. At 5:30, before the alarm crowed, Elena showered, wrapped her hair, dressed in cobalt slacks and a cream blouse, and arranged breakfast bowls of papaya and Greek yogurt. Darren came downstairs in gym shorts, phone already to his ear on a conference call. He mouthed, "Morning," a phantom kiss in the air. Elena sipped tea steeped with ginger slices, letting the warmth spread through ribs that felt recently hollowed. Under the table, her phone buzzed. A calendar reminder glowed. Rooted Radiance rehearsal, 9 o'clock. She smiled, a small real smile, because the day ahead might exhaust her, but at least it would engage her. She slipped a note under Darren's coffee mug. "Dinner at 7 if you like. If not, I will spend the evening writing." Whether he would read it was another matter, but the act of leaving the note felt like choosing motion over stagnation. As she locked the front door behind her, dawn flared across the sky like a curtain pulled open. Elena walked to her car, shoulders square, the echo of her own earlier words beating in her pulse. Confidence is louder than trends. Out of the corner of her eye she glimpsed the upstairs window. Darren stood there, coffee mug lifted, note in his other hand. Their eyes met for 3 seconds. He raised the mug in a tentative salute. It was not an apology, nor a pledge, but it was an acknowledgement, and it was more than yesterday. Elena nodded, climbed into the driver's seat, and let the engine growl to life. The war room at Gallery Marketing was a glass box suspended in the heart of the open-plan floor, as if the agency's founders had wanted every brainstorm to feel like a performance observed by the whole company. Screens on all 4 walls glowed with the agency logo, a minimalist G rendered in shifting gradients that pulsed softly like a breathing organism. At 8:45, Elena entered with a leather folio tucked under one arm and a calm that looked rehearsed but was actually the product of dozens of client battles won and lost. The fragrance of dry erase markers mingled with the faint aroma of cinnamon rolls cooling on a sideboard. Whiteboards were already scribbled with half-erased arrows from a previous team's late-night session, the residue of someone else's creative storm. Ajahn Kapoor stood at the head of the conference table, a slim remote in his hand. "Morning, team. 10 minutes till XX arrive. Zoe, you are second. Elena, you are first. I want decisive energy. Think stage lights, not meeting room." Zoe Sani rolled her shoulders and clicked through slides on her tablet. Neon shapes flashed across the glass tabletop, reflecting on her perfectly shaped nails. Across from her, Miles Osifo arranged high-resolution printouts of Elena's concept typography, triple-checking alignment as if the margins were lines of fate. Elena placed her folio on the table, removed a single sheet of ivory cardstock, and slid it toward Miles. It was a new cover slide, a sepia photograph of braided palms passing a clay water vessel from mother to daughter. Beneath it, in serif gold, the words rooted radiance. Miles inhaled softly, reverent. "Stronger than yesterday's draft," he murmured. Elena nodded. "We removed clutter, so the heart can breathe." She looked at Zoe, who smiled but said nothing. At 9 on the dot, senior leadership filed in. Temi Afolayan, the chief strategy officer, led the vanguard, her anchor patterned jacket the only burst of color in an otherwise monochrome sea of suits. She carried an aura of brisk efficiency, the kind that could either crown a concept or end it with a glance. Behind her came Martin Griggs, the British expatriate CFO who spoke little but watched everything, and Khadija Sool, head of client relations, whose success metric was goosebumps on a board member's forearm. Ajahn closed the frosted door. "We will review 2 directions for the Femilux Cosmetics rebrand. Feist, Elena Rosario with rooted radiance. Elena, the floor is yours." Elena stepped forward, remote in hand. The lights dimmed, and the first slide filled the wall, the sepia mother and daughter image, warm and textured. "In a marketplace obsessed with immediacy," Elena began, her voice pitched low and steady, "Femilux holds a secret advantage: time. These products have accompanied 3 generations of women. We will not chase trends. We will invite consumers to remember who they are when the noise fades." She advanced the slide. A flowchart appeared, memory nodes, legacy touchpoints, resilience metrics. Each term came alive under her narration. She spoke of a digital archive where customers could upload family beauty rituals, of limited edition packaging that used foiled versions of archival patterns, of influencer partnerships chosen not for follow accounts but for documented community impact. The XX leaned in. Temi scribbled emotional IOI across her notepad, then underlined it twice, her silent way of saying this is gold. Khadija tapped her pen against her chin, eyes gleaming. Even Martin, stoic as a marble column, tilted his head and murmured, "Compelling." At the crescendo, Elena clicked to a final slide, a short video vignette. A grandmother stirred shea butter in a sunlit kitchen while her granddaughter watched, eyes wide. A title card appeared, "Beauty that Remembers." The lights brightened. Silence, that fragile crystal so easily smashed by unnecessary words, filled the room. Temi spoke first. "Elena, you have given the brand a soul." Elena bowed her head once. "Thank you." Ajahn exhaled. "Zoe, your turn. Impress us." Zoe strode to the screen. It flickered with sudden neon. Hype now pulsed in electric pink over glitch art. Up-tempo music thumped from hidden speakers. Femilux needs relevance, not nostalgia, Zoe declared. Voice sharp. We leverage micro-influences, augmented reality lipstick filters, and a flash sale NFT drop that unlocks limited run shades. Slide zip by, data on Gen Z spending, graphs of trend churn, TikTok dance overlays mocking stodgy heritage brands. Zoe's delivery was bullet fast, almost aggressive. At slide 12, Martin raised a hand. Your revenue projections, Zoe. What retention rate are you assuming post-campaign? Zoe hesitated. Pivot from retention to continuous acquisition. The idea is to stay ahead of. Temmie interjected. So there is no retention model. Zoe's smile glitched. Retention is built into the hype cycle itself. Cottager tapped the table once, a silent verdict. Zoe rushed through the final slides. Questions. Silence stretched. Someone's stomach rumbled. Someone else coughed. Finally, Temmie said, "Thank you. We will discuss in camera." XX and creatives filed out, leaving Arjun, Elena, Zoe, and Miles. Arjun cleared his throat. Decision seems obvious, but official word by end of day. Excellent work, Elena. Zoe gathered her laptop with jerky movements. She caught Elena's gaze. Vintage does not sell, she muttered, but the earlier certainty had drained from her tone. Elena answered calmly, "That is because you have not lived long enough to know what lasts." Zoe's cheeks burned crimson. She stalked out, braid swinging like a verdict. Miles let out a breath he had not known he was holding. Elena and Miles walked a bright corridor lined with framed campaign awards. Miles clutched his notebook. "How did you predict their questions so precisely?" Elena smiled. "Strategy is listening. XX telegraphed concerns in the silences between their words. Map those silences, and you will know the questions before they are spoken." Miles scribbled that down. "Could you, maybe, mentor me formally? Even one lunch a week?" He looked like he expected the sun but would be grateful for a candle. Elena paused at the window that overlooked the city's traffic mosaic. "People chase speed," she said, repeating the line from the canteen. "But endurance builds legacy. Lunch tomorrow. Bring your rough portfolio. We will audit it together." Miles beamed, gratitude evident. Down the hall, Zoe watched the exchange from behind a pillar. Her throat tightened. For a fleeting second, admiration warred with envy, and envy threw the first punch. By 3, whispers had spread. Designers nudged each other. Elena's deck got a standing nod. Copywriters exchanged memes of ancient relics stamped trending. Somewhere in the building, Zoe heard a junior quip. "Vintage sells, apparently." She ducked into an empty photo studio. Phone in hand, opened Twitter. Her anonymous alt account, @HypeHawk, felt like a private weapon. A plan formed, half reflex, half desperation. She scrolled through Elena's publicly available photos, found one from 8 years ago. Elena at a conference, eyes tired, dress wrinkled from a delayed flight. Zoe attached it, typed, "This the boss energy we are meant to worship. Okay." She hovered a thumb over tweet. A flicker of conscience. Maybe. She pressed send anyway. Wednesday morning smelled of impending rain. Drops battered the office's rooftop garden while inside the cafeteria Elena and Miles sat over omelets and plantain chips. Miles spread sketches across the table, typography studies, mood boards, logo experiments. Elena studied each with a curator's attention. "Your kerning is thoughtful," she said, tapping a logo. "But your color reliance is heavy. Build forms that can stand in monochrome first. True strength is visible without decoration." Miles nodded, scribbling notes. Rain drummed overhead in polyrhythmic applause. At the next table, Zoe pretended to scroll her phone, eavesdropping. The tweet she had posted the night before had gained traction. More than 500 likes in 12 hours. A neon thrill and a queasy dread grappled in her gut. Miles asked, "Why invest time in me? You barely know me." Elena sipped hibiscus tea. "Because someone once invested in me when all I had was potential and early mornings. I repay the debt forward." She paused. "And because teaching crystallizes mastery." Zoe's fingers tightened around her phone. Something cracked. Pride, or perhaps the shell of an old illusion. At 11, Elena's phone buzzed. A WhatsApp message from a colleague contained a screenshot of the viral tweet. Underneath, a single line. "Have you seen this?" Elena studied the photo of her younger, exhausted self, the mocking caption. She felt surprise, then a stirring of compassion, for the woman in the photo, Satanly, but also, inexplicably, for the unseen hand that posted it. She walked to the restroom, locked her stall, and breathed. Her heartbeat was steady, not racing. She remembered her journal line, "Even wilted roses have roots." She whispered it aloud. "And I have never stopped blooming." Outside, the agency's Slack channels ignited. Who did this? Low blow. Elena is grace under fire they. Ungraceful speculation turned, as gossip often does, into suspecting Zoe. A junior dev wrote, "Blue hair Intern always slandering vintage." The rumor leapt chat channels like static sparks. Zoe saw the threads and felt ice crawl along her spine. She shoved her phone into her pocket and headed for the rooftop terrace. Rain or no rain. Clouds ripped open, letting sunlight pour through a widening bruise of blue. Zoe leaned against a railing, drenched, tears mingling with rain, rage fizzing. Footsteps approached. She spun, expecting a reprimand. It was Miles, water beading on his glasses. "Everyone thinks you posted that." Zoe snapped. "Did you come to gloat?" Miles shook his head. "I came to ask why." She barked a laugh that cracked. "Because everyone is obsessed with her. Because she is safe." Her voice rose. "Because I am tired of worshipping relics." Lightning forked in the distance. Miles spoke softly. "Maybe people are not worshipping a relic. Maybe they are respecting someone who calls them to be better." Zoe's shoulders sagged. "You think she is perfect. She is just older." She spit out the word like a pit. "Older," Miles echoed. "Means she has survived storms you have not yet felt." Zoe wiped rain and tears with a trembling hand. "I want it to matter." Miles gestured at the city stretching below. "You still can, but not by tearing down someone else's foundation." Zoe choked on a sob. The sky boomed. She fled inside, leaving Miles alone with the rain. At 3, Arjun gathered the team in the main conference hall. Timmy, Khadija, and Martin flanked him. Their expressions were carved from bedrock. Timmy addressed the room. "We are disappointed to learn a defamatory post targeting Elena has been traced to an internal IP address. Digital forensics confirm it originated from Zoe Sani's workstation." A collective gasp hissed around the room. Zoe stood near the back, color draining. Timmy continued, "Effective immediately. Zoe Sani is suspended, pending final review." Arjun stepped forward. "Let this serve as a reminder. Brilliance without integrity is bankruptcy." Zoe's breath hitched. Security escorted her to gather personal items. Whispers followed, but Elena remained silent, eyes down, hands folded. That evening, Elena sat in her office, lights dimmed, city lights blinking outside like distant ships. She reread a line from her journal. "I will not dismantle myself to fit smaller rooms." She closed the book, leaned back, and allowed one tear to streak down her cheek, both grief for Zoe's derailment and relief for her own centeredness. A soft knock. The door opened a crack. Miles peered in. "You all right?" Elena smiled, tears still shining. "Yes, thank you." Miles hesitated. "You always say endurance builds legacy. Does that still apply tonight?" Elena rose, walked to the window. "Especially tonight. A brand may be attacked. A character stands long after applause or scandal fades." Miles nodded, understanding deeper than words. In that moment, the quiet observer from Chapter 4 became more than a mentee. He became proof that legacy can seed new gardens even in the soil of public uproar. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city exhaled steam that caught the pink of sunset. A humid Thursday morning pressed itself against the facade of gallery marketing, the sky a restless pewter sheet that threatened rain without the courtesy of follow-through. Inside the agency, Elena Rosario walked past rows of standing desks where screens already glowed with half-written briefs. Her phone vibrated with successive notifications, likes, retweets, quoted snarks. The anonymous post featuring her exhausted 8-year-old conference photo had broken through the 4-digit engagement ceiling overnight and was now lunging toward viral momentum. Miles Osifo met her at the reception alcove, Brows knotted. It has crossed 70,000 retweets, he said in a hush usually reserved for newsroom tragedies. Comment sections are free-for-all. Half of them defend you, half are unkind. Elena exhaled through her nose, a practiced release that kept emotion from knotting her shoulders. Unkind opinions reveal more about the speaker than the subject. What matters is how we choose to reply, if at all. They walked toward the internal studio to rehearse a video statement for the brand. Midway, Elena's phone flashed another light. Darren Adebayo liked at Hypehawk's tweet. The screen burned like cold fire against her palm. For a heartbeat she stopped walking, the corridor stretching before her like a tunnel lined with curious eyes. Miles noticed. Something wrong. Elena clicked off the screen. Nothing I cannot carry, she said, and resumed walking. But inside, the weight was real. Arjun Kapoor had converted a small boardroom into a crisis bunker. Printouts of tweets covered the walls, annotated with Sharpie notes, sarcasm, support, shared trauma, misogyny, a taxonomy of digital humanity. Temi Afolayan, the chief strategy officer, paced beside a whiteboard where an equation read reputation lag times response grace equals trust delta. Carter Jasul, head of client relations, addressed Elena the moment she entered. Femi Lux wants to issue a statement of solidarity with you, but they are wary of inflaming cancel culture. They want cues from your tone. Elena placed her notebook on the table, spine aligned precisely with the edge. No outrage, no pity. We respond with transparency. Acknowledge the photo, the fatigue it captured, and the resilience that followed. Temi nodded. Position fatigue is proof of commitment, not weakness. Miles set up a ring light. Elena sat before the camera. The room fell into a reverent stillness as she began. Years ago I arrived at a leadership summit after an overnight flight delay. My dress was wrinkled, my eyes were tired, and my determination was intact. Someone has shared that image online with a mocking caption. To the women who see themselves in that tired face, remember, exhaustion is not failure. It is often the receipt for progress. To the men and women learning the cost of easy laughter at another's expense, remember, ridicule ages faster than the people it targets. I stand grateful for every wrinkle, because each one mapped the journey that brought me here. Better, not bitter. She ended with a gentle smile that refused sorrow yet did not masquerade as delight. Miles clicked stop. Silence, thicker than steam, hovered before anyone dared breathe. Carter just swallowed. That will resonate. Temi pointed her marker at Elena. And it is impossible to parody sincerity. Lunch break arrived with the distant boom of approaching thunder. Elena ate cucumber sandwiches in her office, while her mind replayed Darren's digital endorsement of the cruel tweet. The tiny blue thumbs up was a thumbtack in her memory. She called him. The line rang 3 times before he answered, voice distracted. Hey, I am in the middle of a crunch report. Can this wait? It is short, Elena replied. You like to post mocking me. I need to understand why. Silence, followed by clacking keys. I swipe like on lots of things without thinking. Auto-scroll habit. It was not personal. Elena's grip tightened on the phone. Intent may be absent, but impact is present. Casual cruelty still cuts. He sighed. You are reading too much into an online gesture. No, she said, voice steady. I am reading exactly what was written in digital ink. He shifted. I will unlike it if that helps. She closed her eyes. Rain rattled the window. It might help you feel better. It does not rewrite the first click. Elena, I cannot do this right now. Neither can I, she admitted quietly, and ended the call. She allowed herself 1 minute to breathe through the sting. Then she returned to the script edits, because wake, at least, rewarded clarity. At home, rain drummed the roof in relentless percussion. Elena lit a sandalwood candle, opened her journal, and wrote. Betrayal is sometimes loud, a slammed door. Sometimes it is a silent click that millions can see. Either way, I refuse to build my worth on anyone's uncertain scaffolding. She closed the book and made mint tea. Steam rose like fragile hope, but hope, she knew, could calcify into willpower. The next morning, Miles waited outside her office holding a rolled poster. When she invited him in, he unrolled an updated brand mood board. Archival photos blended with minimalist layouts. I refined the monochrome structures we discussed, he said. I want them to support color rather than rely on it. Elena studied the board. Excellent progression. She touched one corner where grandmother applied pomade to her granddaughter's scalp. You allowed space for breath. Miles hesitated. Have you slept? Enough to dream, she answered, then shifted focus. Remember, beauty that suffocates a story is merely decoration. What lasts is narrative oxygen. Miles wrote that down word for word. Underneath admiration, he wrestled guilt. He had not defended Elena publicly online, telling himself silence was neutrality. Now he realized neutrality masqueraded as comfort. Across town, Zoe's sunny studio apartment looked like a paused cyclone. Clothes draped chairs, coffee mugs colonized every flat surface, and unread HR emails stacked in her inbox. She refreshed Twitter compulsively, watching Elena's statement clip climb 500,000 views with overwhelmingly positive comments. She whispered into the quiet, "Even wilted roses have roots." She had mocked those words, yet now they echoed like a hymn. A single page from her sketchbook lay on the floor, a doodle she had once made of herself steering a rocket labeled Corée. Someone, maybe life itself, had snapped the fuel line. She opened her drafting notebook, wrote Elena's statement verbatim, then beneath it, "Why does this feel like the apology I owe myself?" Her suspension email warned that an ethics panel would decide her fate in 2 weeks. The future, once a highway, was now a maze with invisible walls. 1 week later, Elena stood backstage at the Rise Lagos Women's Summit, a 2-day gathering of entrepreneurs, activists, and creatives. The main hall seated 2,000. A live stream promised tens of thousands more. Miles hovered near a lighting console, ensuring her slide deck would transition flawlessly. He wore a lanyard marked assistant producer, a responsibility Elena had negotiated for him with the summit chair after praising his diligence. He whispered, "Your MIC is hot in 30 seconds. Elena adjusted the discreet headset. She wore a floor-length indigo anchor dress patterned with bronze fractals, heritage meeting modern geometry. The dress moved like slow water, dignified and fluid. She inhaled, remembering nights of silent dinners, viral mockery, broken trust, and quiet resilience. She stepped onto the stage. Spotlights converged, haloing her against a backdrop of swirling amber light. Applause rose like a tide. She waited for it to crest and recede. Then she spoke. "Good morning. I greet every woman who has ever been told her expiration date is earlier than her ambition. I was recently reminded, by an unflattering photo and a sharper caption, that the world reserves the right to judge us at our most exhausted. In that image I looked weary, and yes, I was. But fatigue is the tax we pay on dreams that keep growing. Authenticity does not age, it evolves. Trends sprint. Character endures. Confidence is misunderstood. People think it is volume, but confidence is the calm after you have already survived the storm others fay. Confidence walks into a room and does not need to announce itself, because the room rearranges to accommodate quiet conviction." A hush fell so complete that even the cameras seemed to aim more carefully. She continued, "You may be mocked for your wrinkles, your pauses, your reluctance to chase the newest glitter. Let them laugh. By the time the glitter fades, your integrity will still illuminate." She closed with a story about her grandmother teaching her to weave raffia mats, the rhythm slow, the rose meticulous. Grandma said, "Speed steals beauty's breath. Take your time so the mat outlives the moment." Friends, may your work outlive the moment. She stepped back. The silence broke into thunderous ovation. Within hours, hashtags bloomed. #authenticity evolves and #room for quiet power. Influencers quoted her lines over sepia photos of their own creative journeys. Media outlets clipped the speech for evening broadcasts. Darren watched the feed from his office cubicle. Coworkers turned to him, unaware of their history, exclaiming, "This woman is phenomenal." A knot formed in his throat. He clicked Elena's profile, scrolled to her latest post, a still from the speech with the caption, "Thank you for listening." Underneath, his new comment said, "Unpublished in the draft box. Proud of you." He hovered, unsure if he had earned the right to say so. He closed the window instead. In her apartment, Zoe watched the speech 3 times. Each viewing stripped another layer of defensiveness until tears tracked unpainted cheeks. She opened her suspended work email and drafted a message to HR. "I am prepared to accept any consequence, But I need to begin with an apology. Not to the board, not to the brand, but to the individual I harmed. She pressed save but did not send. Feist, she messaged Elena on LinkedIn. Ms. Rosario, may I meet you for 10 minutes to apologize in person? I do not expect forgiveness. I only hope to express regret and to learn. She stared at the blinking cursor after learn. It felt audacious to ask for mentorship from the woman she had tried to humiliate. Yet growth required audacity paired with humility. She clicked send before fear revoked her resolve. Backstage, Elena removed her headset, pulse still steady. Miles bounced in triumph. They are calling it the speech of the summit. Elena smiled. The speech belongs to the listeners now. May it serve them well. Her assistant handed over a phone. Messages poured in from strangers thanking her for validating their slow burn, their late bloom. Among them, one stood out, Zoe's request. Elena read it twice. She closed her eyes, listening to the distant swell of another presenter's intro music. She thought of roses, roots, and the soil of second chances. Then she typed a reply. Zoe, meet me at Destiny Cafe on Monday at 9. Come ready to talk less about the past and more about the character you plan to build next. She hit send. Miles peered at her. All good. Better than good, Elena said. She felt the quiet click of legacy locking into place. Not a triumphal clang, but the secure slide of a door that would stay open for others to walk through. The Monday after the summit rose bright and merciless, Lagos sunshine pouring over the city like molten brass. Elena awoke 20 minutes before her alarm, heart stilled by a curious expectancy rather than dread. She brewed hibiscus tea, sliced pawpaw into neat cubes, and placed a single blueberry on top of each, an homage to order amid life sprawl. At 7 she dressed in a powder blue blazer, white silk blouse, and tailored navy trousers. She added minimal gold hoop earrings and a watch with a mother-of-pearl face her grandmother had given her when she landed her first job, a talisman of endurance. Downstairs, Darren lingered at the dining table, laptop open, eyes hesitant. An untouched mug of coffee sent thin spirals into the quiet. Elena paused on the last step. Their life had become a series of pauses, each waiting to see if the other would fill the space first. Morning, Darren said, voice hoarse as if unused overnight. He closed the laptop lid halfway, a rare gesture of suspended priorities. Good morning, Elena answered, moving to the breadboard. She cut 2 slices, dropped them into the toaster, and watched orange coils heat. Darren rubbed the bridge of his nose. The summit video, he faltered, searching for footing. You were extraordinary. Elena kept her gaze on the toaster. Thank you. He shifted in his chair. I realized something watching you. I have been absent. Words seemed to fight through brambles in his throat. I cannot explain why liking that post felt trivial in the moment. It was thoughtless. I see that now. The toaster clicked. Elena buttered her toast with deliberate calm. Thoughtlessness is gravity. Small acts orbit larger truths. Darren winced. I deserve that. Elena placed 1 slice on a plate and set it before him. Deserve is a measurement best left to accountants and gods. I measure patterns. Today I intend to break a few. Darren looked up, confusion flickering behind regret. What does that mean? She lifted her handbag. It means I have an appointment with my financial planner. Some accounts will shift, insurance beneficiaries will update. I need frameworks that protect my future, whatever form it takes. He opened his mouth and closed it, a man watching the lines on the map redraw under his feet. Does this mean we are finished? Elena inhaled, steady and full. It means we are at a crossroads. I will no longer park my dreams in a cul-de-sac while you decide whether you are driving beside me. She softened her tone, not out of pity but dignity. You did not lose me to another man, Darren. You lost me when I stopped losing myself. Silence. Even the refrigerator motor seemed to hush. Darren's eyes glistened. Can I meet you halfway? Halfway is still 30% short, Elena replied gently. Meet me at integrity. Then we will see. She kissed his temple, a gesture equal parts goodbye and possibility, then stepped into sunlight bursting through the doorway like a herald of change. The office of Edamola Adio, CFP, overlooked the Alubaran waterfront, where cranes etched shapes against the skyline. Inside, glass shelves held awards for fiscal stewardship and a framed quote reading "Money is a story," Write wisely. Ademola was a soft-spoken man in his 50s with a salt-and-pepper beard trimmed to monkish precision. He welcomed Elena with a handshake that conveyed both steadiness and respect. "I watched your summit address," he said while pouring sparkling water. Authenticity became equity in real time. Elena smiled slightly. "Then let us convert attention into security." They reviewed her joint accounts, retirement funds, real estate deeds. Ademola annotated figures with a fountain pen identical to Hayes, kindred stationary spirits. "Feist," he said, sliding a folder forward. "You will open a personal high-yield account in your name only. Automatic transfers from your salary will seed it. This is your independence fund." "Approved," Elena said. "Next, we restructure life insurance. Primary beneficiary shifts from spouse to trust, with you as trustee. The trust's contingent beneficiary is a literacy scholarship for girls in your grandmother's village." Elena's chest warmed. Legacy must breathe outward, not stale inward. They moved to property titles. Half of the duplex belonged to her by law, but Ademola suggested a formal valuation and a notarized statement of equitable interest. Less romance, more arithmetic. Elena initialed pages where adhesive flags protruded. Each signature felt like one rung climbed on a ladder out of a fog. Finally, Ademola clasped his hands. "Emotional returns also matter. How will you invest in joy?" Elena considered. "By mentoring, by writing, and perhaps by traveling somewhere unfamiliar." He nodded. "Diversify fulfillment. Sound strategy." As she left, she felt lighter and taller. Proof that paperwork can be an exorcism when wielded with intent. 9 o'clock found Elena at Destiny Cafe, a quiet nook scented with cardamom and fresh pages. The owners ran a tiny bookstore in the back. Zoe already sat at a corner table, posture tense, hands folded so tightly her knuckles blanched. The blue streaks in her hair had faded to muted teal, less rebellion, more echo. Elena approached. "Thank you for coming." Zoe rose abruptly, words tumbling over each other. "Thank you for agreeing. I know I am the last person you wish to see." Elena set her bag down. "I wish to see any person willing to transform." They ordered ginger lattes. The first sip bridged an awkward silence. Zoe cleared her throat. "I was terrified of becoming inconsequential, so I tried to make you smaller. It was cowardice dressed as confidence." Elena listened, eyes steady. "My suspension stands," Zoe continued. "But HR says there's a pathway back if I complete a professional responsibility course and secure a mentor's endorsement." She swallowed. "I do not deserve your endorsement yet. I am asking for your guidance." Elena leaned forward. "I mentor those who recognize the difference between volume and value. Tell me 3 lessons you extracted from this ordeal." Zoe inhaled shakily. 1. Identity built on applause collapses in silence. 2. Integrity is non-transferable, so borrowing someone else's style without substance is theft. 3. Legacy is a long game, and you cannot cheat time. You can only invest in it. Elena nodded once. "Good preliminaries. Now, action plan. Feist, you will draft a public apology that centers accountability, not excuses. Second, you will volunteer 20 hours with an organization that supports women in disadvantaged communities. Service cures entitlement. Third, you will present me, in 30 days, with a reimagined campaign that honors heritage without sacrificing innovation. Blend humility with creativity." Zoe took notes, tears hovering but unshed. "I accept." Finally, Elena added, "You will silence social media for 30 days, not as punishment, but as detox. Input shapes output." Zoe exhaled, relief and fear dancing. "Understood." Elena offered her hand. Zoe shook it, grip firm despite trembling. A covenant of effort, not absolution. As they parted, Zoe whispered, "You saved me from myself." Elena placed a gentle hand on Zoe's shoulder. "You will do the saving. I only point to the map." That evening, Darren sat at the dining table. The same coffee Elena had set in front of him hours earlier, now reheated but still half drunk. Documents lay spread before him, mortgage terms, joint account statements, the note of amendment from the insurance company he had received via email. Reality, ledger shop. He dialed his brother Kola. "How do you know when a marriage is in crisis?" Kola, ever direct, replied, when you asked that question instead of your wife? Darren rubbed his eyes. I screwed up. She built a mountain of patience, and I carved tunnels of neglect right through it. Then fill the tunnels, Cola said simply. But know this, patchwork crumbles unless you reinforce the foundation. Where do I start? Start by listening, and by remembering that growth is uncomfortable. If you are comfortable, you are not growing. Darren stared at the cold coffee, a black mirror reflecting a man who had forgotten to look beyond himself. In her study, Elena opened her journal under lamplight. She wrote, "Today I chose solvency of soul and solvency of purse. Confidence is capital, integrity is compound interest. The pattern is broken when the first person steps off the carousel. I stepped off. A breeze through the open window rustled the page like applause. Zoe woke before dawn, habit honed by remorse-fueled insomnia. She laced up running shoes and jogged along the deserted marina promenade, city skyline blurring to watercolor under her sweat-stung eyes. Each footfall hammered the mantra she had copied from Elena's summit speech: authenticity evolves. The phrase became cadence, penance, and promise. By 7 she showered, dressed in jeans and a plain white tee. No flashy slogans, no neon declarations, then headed to Brightpaths, a non-profit that taught digital skills to women restarting careers after domestic upheaval. Inside a modest classroom, laptops hummed and 20 women listened as an instructor demonstrated basic HTML. Zoe took a seat at the back, notebook ready. The program coordinator, a stout woman named Mrs. Efyong, welcomed her. "First rule, hey," she said, "is respect the journey each woman carries. Second rule is speak less, serve more." Zoe nodded. For 4 hours she assisted with code tags, Google searches, and confidence crises that presented as clumsy mouse clicks. Watching one middle-aged participant light up when her first webpage rendered "Hello World" in purple Comic Sans filled Zoe with a warmth social media had never delivered. During lunch break, a participant named Tamer asked, "You are good with design. Why volunteer here?" Zoe answered honestly, "Because I needed a reminder that creation beats competition, and because service reshapes perspective." Tamer smiled. "You talk like someone who fell and got up wiser." "Trying," Zoe said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. Back at Gallier Marketing, Elena's Rooted Radiance campaign entered final pitch rehearsals before Femilux's board. Miles unveiled prototype packaging etched with stories in micro-embossed lines, scenes visible only when light caught them at the right angle. The board, grizzled executives accustomed to numbers, leaned forward with childlike wonder. Elena narrated, "Every package is a keepsake. Peel the label and discover a printed link to an online archive where customers can record their own beauty rituals, joining a living tapestry." The room fell into that golden hush when commerce realizes it has stumbled into legacy. The CFO, Martin Griggs, cleared his throat. "I came prepared to douse sentiment with feasibility," he admitted. "But the numbers aligned better than my skepticism." Approved. Applause broke, subtle yet sincere. Miles grinned so widely his glasses slipped. Elena caught them mid-air and passed them back. When they left the building, Miles whispered, "You changed the tone of an entire corporation." Elena shook her head. "We reminded them of the tone they had forgotten." The campaign liftoff would bring pay rises and press releases. Yet Elena's thoughts drifted to Zoe, silent on social channels, working off-grid. Shadows shrink, she mused, not when light criticizes them, but when light simply expands. That night, Darren cooked jollof rice, his first attempt in years. Aromas coaxed Elena into the kitchen. He wore an apron that read "seasoned with love," a dusty gift from a bridal shower long past. She raised an eyebrow. "You found the spice rack?" He nodded, stirring. "And a therapist. First session tomorrow." Elena, startled, leaned against the counter. "That is unexpected." "Patterns," he said, echoing her earlier tame. "I need to break mine too." They ate at the dining table, no screens. Darren asked about the campaign, listened without interruption, and even posed thoughtful questions. Conversation flowed, cautious but genuine. When plates were cleared, he produced an envelope. "I met with a financial counselor today," he said. "Here is a statement of assets and debts, plus a plan to contribute equally to our joint and individual goals. Transparency. Phase 1. Elena took the envelope, heart steady. "Thank you," she said, neither promising nor refusing reconciliation, only acknowledging the step. They washed dishes in amicable quiet. Outside, palm fronds rustled in night wind. Inside, possibility breathed. 30 days after their cafe meeting, Zoe emailed Elena her reimagined campaign concept. Heritage Forward, an interactive pop-up museum blending AR filters with archival artifacts. The email included mock-ups, budget estimates, and a reflective essay on humility in design. Elena reviewed the deck at dawn, sunlight stroking the edges of each page. The work brimmed with vibrant restraint, exuberance anchored by respect. She typed a reply. "Zoe, this is thoughtful and fresh. Meet me tomorrow at 8. We will refine, then present to the ethics panel. Bring your volunteer log. Impact matters. Quiet power grows. Keep tending. E." Zoe, reading this at the Bright Paths classroom, pressed a hand over her mouth, tears crowning her lashes. Across the room, Tamer called, "Need help with CSS, coach?" Zoe blinked the world back into focus, smiled, and walked over, purpose ringing in her footsteps. 2 days later, Zoe sat before 3 HR representatives and Temi Afolayan, who chaired the ethics review. Elena sat beside Zoe, not as shield but as witness. Temi addressed Zoe. "Your conduct breached professional standards. However, we recognize remediation efforts. Volunteer records and a stellar mentorship report carry weight. Why should we reinstate you?" Zoe spoke clearly. "Because I have dismantled the pedestal I once craved. Now I want to build platforms, plural, where stories stand taller than egos." Temi's expression betrayed nothing, but her eyes flared with interest. "And if reinstated, I will submit quarterly self-reflection reports, continue community service, and accept a 6-month probation with performance linked to collaboration metrics." The board conferred in hushed tones. Finally, Temi said, "We are inclined to approve reinstatement under the terms proposed. One condition, you present your Heritage Forward concept as an internal case study on ethical innovation." Zoe nodded, gratitude swelling. "I will." Elena placed a gentle hand on Zoe's back, a silent yes. That evening, Zoe exited the building into sunset glow. She lifted her phone, hesitated, then installed an app blocker that limited social media to 20 minutes a day. She opened Twitter, drafted a final thread. 30 days ago I weaponized mockery. Today I learned life edits the reckless. To anyone hustling for applause, try hustling for growth. It is a quieter climb, but the view lasts longer. She posted, locked the app, and slipped the phone into her pocket. Ahead, the city vibrated with night energy, but Zoe felt an unusual stillness inside, as if a soul had discovered equilibrium. Above, an old billboard for Femilux was being dismantled, making room for a new campaign. In its shadow, Zoe walked, not diminished but defined. Back home, Elena penned her journal entry. Asterisk, today a shadow shrank without me striking a match. Light expands when invited. Asterisk. She paused, sensing Darren standing quietly at the doorframe. He held 2 steaming cups of chamomile. "Tea," he offered. Elena closed her journal. "Tea," she echoed. They sat side by side on the balcony, city lights blinking their Morse code of ceaseless motion. No promises yet, only presence, and sometimes presence is the bravest vow. The horizon glowed faintly where dawn would soon press its first fingerprint. Elena sipped, tasting warmth, tasting beginnings. 3 weeks after Zoe's reinstatement, the entire staff of Gallery Marketing gathered in the glass-roofed atrium for an all-hands meeting. A hush settled over the crowd like fine dust as the lights dimmed. On a low stage stood a clear lectern, a single microphone, and a 30-foot screen that displayed the agency's mission statement: tell stories that honor truth and invite tomorrow. Ajahn Kapoor strode to the MIC colleagues. Today we test that mission. We have witnessed the harm that careless words can unleash. We have also witnessed the strength of accountability. Zoe Sani requested this forum. Elena Rosario agreed to introduce her. May we listen with the intent to understand. Ajahn stepped aside. Elena rose from the front row, tailored emerald suit catching the amber spotlights. She climbed the 3 steps, her presence at once serene and unyielding. Good morning, she began. We often meet here to celebrate wins. Today we celebrate something rarer, repair. Courage is not only speaking when you are right, it is speaking when you are wrong. Zoe, the floor is yours. A polite ripple of applause preceded Zoe's walk to the lectern. She wore a charcoal dress as plain as a monastic vow. Her once neon hair was now its natural black, pulled into a low bun. She carried no notes. As she reached the mic, her inhale trembled, but her exhale anchored the room. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everyone. Some months ago I weaponized my insecurity. I turned a tired photo into a punchline and dressed it up as strategy. The laugh I chased cost me trust, friendships, and self-respect. I stand here to apologize without asterisks. To Elena, whose grace exposed my pettiness. To colleagues whose time was hijacked by crisis control. To interns who watched me and almost learned the wrong lesson. I also stand to account for change. Over the last 30 days, I logged 26 volunteer hours teaching design basics to women rebuilding their careers. They taught me that collaboration is oxygen, not competition. I completed a professional ethics course and designed a campaign called Heritage Forward, which I will present this afternoon as a case study in humility meeting innovation. Accountability is a bridge, not a destination. I promise to keep walking. She stepped back, pulse roaring in her ears. For a suspended heartbeat, the audience was silent, processing a rarity in modern corporate culture. A public reckoning delivered without performative polish. Then palms met, first tentative, then rising into a warm, sustained applause that filled the atrium's glass dome with sound like healing rain. Zoe's lungs loosened. Tears welled, though her voice had not cracked. She looked to Elena, who met her gaze with a nod, approval earned, not bestowed. Miles found Zoe near the refreshment bar where coffee urns hissed. That was brave, he said. Zoe wiped her cheek. Bravery would have been not doing the damage in the first place. Today was necessity. Still, Miles insisted. Many skip necessity and double down on ego. You did not. Zoe accepted the compliment like a fragile parcel. Thank you, she said. Now comes the long work. Across the room, Temi Afolayan approached Elena. Your introduction set the tone, she said. Leadership is easier to list in bullet points than to live in moments like this. Elena sipped water. Leadership is a job description written on the inside of your character, she answered. If you cannot read it there, the title on a business card will not help. Temi smiled, thoughtfully. Femilurk signed the full 3-year engagement this morning. They cited legacy positioning and team resilience. Excellent, Elena replied. Legacy pays dividends. As staff dispersed, Zoe slipped away to a small meditation garden on the terrace. There she opened her notebook and wrote a single line. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. She underlined it twice, the ink sinking like a promise into the page. After work, Elena drove home beneath a tarnished silver sky. Darren awaited her at the door. Sleeves rolled, the scent of agusi soup drifting from the kitchen. He gestured inside. Dinner and a conversation, if you are willing. They ate by candlelight, the table not fully mended but steady on its legs. Darren spoke first. The therapist says apologies without action are just punctuation marks. I am ready for verbs. Elena listened to the outline of his plan, weekly sessions, co-created calendars, digital boundaries, and a mutual sabbatical weekend every quarter. When he finished, she said, I accept the plan. My forgiveness will be a process, not a switch. I will wait as long as it takes, Darren answered. They cleared the dishes together. As they washed plates elbow to elbow, water splashing their forearms, Elena felt the wary bud of trust poke through the soil. She did not rush it. Growth honors its own timetable. Table Mountain rose like a stone anthem against an indigo dawn as delegates poured into the International Women's Vision Summit. 3,000 attendees thronged the Cape Town International Convention Center. Another 100,000 joined via live stream from 89 countries. Banners bearing the summit's theme, Invent the Future, Inherit the Earth, fluttered in salted wind. Inside the main hall, a vast screen displayed 5 honorees selected for their contributions to global leadership. Elena Rosario's portrait appeared third. She stood in profile, head high, bronze anchor gown swirling into negative space that formed the silhouette of Africa. Backstage, Elena adjusted her headset. She wore a midnight blue silk jumpsuit cinched with a gold obi belt. Miles, now lead visual strategist, reviewed last-second cues with the audio crew. Zoe, clipboard in hand, coordinated speaker order. Her probation had ended, and the agency had promoted her to community impact designer. Zoe approached Elena. House is full. Notebook is ready, she said, tapping the leather journal she now carried everywhere. Elena's smile carried pride. Remember to breathe through your listening, she advised. I will, Zoe promised, and slipped into the wings to watch. Lights dimmed. A single cello note vibrated the air. A spotlight traced Elena as she walked to the center, the stage floor reflecting her like moonlit water. Applause rose, wave against cliff, before receding to an expectant hush. Friends, she began, voice amplified yet intimate. When I was 20, I believed success was volume. Louder campaigns, larger crowds, faster lanes. Then life taught me to measure impact by the silence that follows truth. The silence where people reconsider and realign. Months ago, an intern laughed at my confidence. Today she manages programs that turn ridicule into mentorship. That is not a redemption story written by a fairy godmother. That is a blueprint drafted by accountability, revision by revision. Trends fade. Character does not. If your beauty, or your ambition, requires applause to breathe, it is planted in shallow soil. But when you root your work in values deeper than public opinion, seasons may strip your branches yet cannot kill your tree. It is fashionable to talk about disruption. I prefer construction. A disruptor tears down. A constructor builds what lasts. Let us be constructors of equity, of sustainable business, of personal integrity. And to every woman or man who fears they have aged out of relevance, remember, diamonds are simply older coal that stayed the course under pressure. Stay the course. She paused. You could almost hear pens scratch across thousands of notebooks. Cameras flashed like quiet lightning. Elena closed. Thank you for gifting me your hearing. May you now gift the world your doing. She bowed. The ovation rose not in a single roar but in waves, each one louder, as if audiences needed breaths between astonishment. Delegates stood row after row until the hall was a sea of uplifted faces. From her mezzanine seat Zoe felt tears pool, but she blinked them back, noting phrases for later reflection. Beside her sat Tamer, flown in by Bright Paths as community hero after launching a small web design side business. Tamer whispered, that line about shallow soil, gold. Zoe nodded, scribbling. Miles, operating spotlight cues, watched Elena's calm silhouette and felt a swell of gratitude that someone had once believed his quiet could matter. Darren watched via livestream from Lagos, fists clenched in awe of the woman who had always been extraordinary yet was now visible to the world in proportion to her worth. He texted her, your light reaches me across oceans. Proud beyond words. He did not expect a reply. She would be swarmed. But he sent it anyway, an offering placed at the altar of shared progress. After formalities, Elena escaped to a side corridor lined with windows framing the Atlantic horizon. She found Zoe waiting with 2 disposable cups of rooibos tea. I annotated the speech already, Zoe said, handing over a page crammed with reflections. Every sentence was a seed. Elena sipped, warmth curling in her chest. Seeds belong in soil, not paper. How will you plant yours? Zoe inhaled. Bright Paths wants to expand into northern Nigeria. They asked me to design a mobile toolkit for digital skills pop-ups in rural areas. I said yes. Elena's eyes brightened. That is planting. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching gulls swoop over sun-speckled waves. Can you believe, Zoe mused, that a laugh at your expense started the sequence that led here? Elena thought of cosmic irony. The universe composts our failures into fertilizer if we let it. 6 months later, Gallery Marketing's headquarters featured a new mentorship lounge named the Quiet Power Room. On one wall, in bronze lettering, a quote, "Confidence is louder than trends." The lounge thrummed with pairings, senior strategists coaching interns, designers critiquing portfolios, volunteers planning community classes. Elena chaired sessions bi-weekly, Zoe every Friday, Miles alternating Thursdays. Darren, through patient reconstruction, had become a collaborator in Elena's life rather than a spectator. They attended therapy together, traveled to Kenya's Rift Valley during their sabbatical weekend, and discovered that silence between true partners can be comfortable, not cold. Femilux's Rooted Radiance campaign won a Continental Clio Award. Instead of a solo acceptance, Elena invited 10 factory workers whose hands filled the product jars to join her on stage. Photos of that moment went viral, a strategist flanked by the people usually hidden from glossy narratives. Users around the world quoted her various lines, but one caption surfaced most: "If your beauty needs applause, it is not rooted deep enough." The phrase transcended cosmetics, entering dialogues about policy, education, and tech ethics. Elena often walked through the quiet power room after hours, turning off lamps. On one late night she paused, sensing the metronome hum of cleaners vacuuming in distant halls. She rested a hand on the bronze quote and whispered, "Legacy in motion." Outside, Lagos streetlights flickered. Inside, seedlings of character waited for morning to grow toward the next story, the next summit, the next intern brave enough to stand tall without shouting. And somewhere in the digital ether a tired old photo continued to circulate, no longer with a mocking caption but with a new one, penned by an anonymous admirer. This is what resilience looks like before it becomes radiant. The internet kept sharing it. Millions kept seeing themselves in it. Finally, without needing to be filtered.
Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment your thoughts and share our channel with your friends. See you in the next story. From your favorite stories.